hesitated to wake. Frost coated the ground. Smoke from the dying fire coiled lazily upward, and every muscle in Elias's body ached from the cold, the tension, the sleepless night. Mira hadn't moved much. Her breaths were quieter now, but slower too. Shallow. Elias crouched beside her, pressing the back of his hand gently to her side. Still warm. Barely. "She won't survive another night out here," he murmured. His dog, Jasper, whined softly beside him, ears flattened. He felt it too. They had to move. Elias looked around. The forest was dense, and the nearest ranger outpost, if it was still active, was at least 10 miles northeast through rough terrain. Hiking that alone would be grueling. Dragging a half-conscious bear? Impossible. And yet, he grabbed his tarp, rope, and a few long fallen branches. Kneeling, he began fashioning a crude sled. It took nearly an hour, improvising a platform with looped rope to keep Mira from sliding off. The cold bit at his fingers as he worked, but he didn't stop. Not now, not again. When it was ready, he approached Mira and gently spoke, "We're leaving, girl. I'm not letting you die out here." She didn't respond. Her eyes were closed. He rolled the tarp beneath her with care, bracing her body with his knees. The weight was tremendous, but he gritted his teeth and heaved. Mira groaned faintly as he slid her onto the makeshift sled, her wounded leg limp, her breathing barely audible. He tied the ropes across her gently, snug but not tight. Jasper stepped forward, sniffed her snout, then turned toward the trail as if already understanding the task. Elias looped the harness around his waist. The main sled rope knotted across his chest and nodded to Jasper. "Let's go." The forest resisted every step. The sled dragged unevenly across the ground, catching on roots, slipping on frost. Elias strained with each pull, boots slipping as he powered uphill. Sweat soaked his shirt beneath his jacket. His breath came in harsh gasps. Behind him, Mira lay still. He called back constantly, "Hang on, girl. We're almost clear. Just a little farther." But her only responses were faint grunts or no sound at all. Jasper trotted ahead, weaving between trees, ears perked, guiding them along the faint remnants of a game trail. They hadn't gone more than 2 miles when the terrain turned against them. A steep incline rose before them, slick with icy mud and broken rocks. Elias stared at it, jaw clenched. He considered turning back, but the path behind them led only to wolves and silence. So he dug in his boots and climbed. The sled fought him the entire way. Mira's weight pulled backward with every step. Halfway up, Elias slipped. The rope yanked him down and he crashed hard, sliding several feet. A sharp branch slashed his cheek. Jasper barked in alarm. "Damn it!" Blood dripped into Elias's eye. He wiped it away and got up, heart hammering, legs shaking. He tried again. And again. On the 4th attempt, knees screaming, he reached the top. Mira's head lolled, and for a terrifying second he thought she was gone. He dropped beside her, pressing his hand to her chest. A heartbeat. Faint. Fragile. Still there. Relief flooded him. He leaned close. "You're still with me," he whispered. "Don't give up now." Waiting for him. She said she wasn't scared, but her hand had trembled when he took it. He remembered sitting beside her for hours, telling stories, singing lullabies they used to share, promising her that he'd never let anyone suffer like this again. But he'd been too late then. Not now. Never again. He blinked the memory away and returned to the present. Cold air, rustling trees, and Mira's labored breathing behind him. This time, someone would make it. The clouds darkened by late afternoon. Snow began to fall, soft and slow at first, then heavier. The sled dragged harder. Elias's muscles screamed. Every breath tore through his lungs. He collapsed once, face first into the snow, then pushed himself up without thinking. He couldn't afford to stay down. Not now. Jasper barked ahead. Elias looked up. A figure stood at the tree line. Broad shoulders, orange jacket, rifle slung over his back. A man, mid-40s, weathered, rugged, stepped forward slowly, narrowing his eyes. "What the hell?" Elias staggered forward, unhooking the sled rope from his waist. "Please, help me," he gasped. "She's dying." The ranger eyed the bear warily. His hand dropped near his rifle. "That's a bear," he said flatly. "She's injured. Someone tied her to a tree and left her to die." "Could have been for a reason," the ranger replied, skeptical. "A bear that weak could be rabid. Dangerous." "She's not dangerous," Elias snapped. "She's sick, she's exhausted, but she's not aggressive. I've been with her for over a day. She hasn't even growled." The ranger took another step forward, still cautious. "I'll call animal control," he said. "They'll kill her," Elias said, voice rising. "You know they will." Silence stretched between them. The ranger studied Elias, his torn clothes, bloodied face, trembling hands. Then he looked at the bear, who didn't even raise her head. The ranger studied Elias, his torn clothes, bloodied face, trembling hands. Then he looked at the bear, who didn't even raise her head. Finally, the ranger sighed. "There's a vet about 5 miles out, retired. Doesn't ask questions. If we make it there, maybe she's got a shot." Elias nodded furiously. "Then let's go." The ranger stepped behind the sled, grabbed one of the rear ropes, and grunted. "Name's Darnell. You got a name for this bear?" Elias glanced back at her and smiled weakly. "Mira." Darnell raised a brow but didn't question it. They moved forward together, 2 men, 1 dog, and a dying bear against the weight of the wilderness. For the first time, Elias didn't feel alone. Old medical supplies and a vet kit he kept for emergencies. "It won't hold much longer," Darnell muttered, knotting the tubing. "She's stable, for now." Elias stared at her sunken eyes, the patchy fur, the crusted wound on her leg. "She won't make it in the wild. Not like this." "Then what?" Darnell asked, not unkindly. "Animal control will put her down. A zoo would never take her." "I might know a place." Darnell glanced up. "Where?" Elias reached for his phone. His fingers trembled as he tapped in the number. He hadn't dialed it in years. The line rang and rang. Then a voice picked up, gruff, familiar. "Summit Ridge Sanctuary." Elias took a breath. "Laura, it's Elias." A pause. Then a slow exhale. "Elias Hunter, after all this time? I need your help. It's urgent. Life or death." "What's going on?" "What's going on?" Elias told her everything, briefly but with brutal honesty. The bear tied to a tree, the wolves, the rescue, the sled, the hike, the ranger. His voice broke only once when he described how Mira had nudged his hand in the snow. Laura was quiet for a moment. "We don't take in large predators from unknown origins," she said finally. "It's against protocol. No medical history, no behavior data. Too much risk." "I understand, but if you heard what I've seen, if you just saw her, I'm sorry." He closed his eyes. "Then let me come there. Let me bring her in myself. I'll sign whatever you need. She doesn't have long." Another pause. Then a sigh. "Send me your GPS," Laura said. "I'll talk to Dr. Ramirez. If she agrees, we'll prep the bay." Elias didn't wait for confirmation. He sent their location and whispered a silent prayer. An hour later, they were on the road. Mira lay curled in the back seat of Darnell's truck, wrapped in every blanket they had. The heater blasted warm air, and Elias sat beside her, gently resting a hand near her paw. "Stay with me," he said softly. "You're not done yet." The drive was long. Winding roads, frozen patches, rising fog. Tension hung thick between every tree they passed. Darnell focused on the road, silent but steady. Elias talked to Mira in a low voice, telling her about the sanctuary, about the forested enclosure, the quiet lake, the other rescues who made it. "They'll take care of you, I promise." At one point, Mira stirred. Her eyes opened slightly and she made a low, rasping sound. Elias leaned in closer. "Yeah, that's it. You're still here." But just as quickly, her eyes closed again. The sanctuary gates loomed large and steel-gray against the backdrop of snow-covered pines. Laura stood just inside, flanked by 2 handlers and a vet in scrubs. The moment the truck rolled to a stop, they moved in, professional and fast. "She's septic," Elias warned. "Left tied to a tree, wound on her hind leg, possible internal damage. She's not responsive." Dr. Ramirez was already checking her vitals. "Get the gurney," she barked. The team moved fast, sliding Mira gently out and onto a padded stretcher. The bear moaned faintly, head lolling. The vet adjusted the IV and began shouting orders. "Elias, you can't come in," Laura said, blocking his path as they wheeled Mira into the surgery bay. "We'll update you when we can." He opened his mouth to argue, but nodded instead. He understood. He watched as the doors shut behind her, and then silence. Hours passed. Elias sat in a waiting room that smelled of antiseptic and pine oil. The clock ticked too loud. Jasper lay curled at his feet, tail twitching in restless dreams. Darnell had left to refuel the truck. Elias leaned back in the chair, head swimming with exhaustion. His body ached from the journey, his limbs heavy, and then the weight finally pulled him under. When he woke, it was dark. A thick wool blanket was wrapped around his shoulders. A faint light glowed under the surgery doors. Jasper stirred beside him, tail wagging once before settling again. The chair beside him creaked. Laura. She looked tired, her gray-streaked hair pulled into a bun, eyes red-rimmed but alert. "She made it through surgery," she said quietly. Elias's heart skipped. "What?" "We removed infected tissue, flushed the wound, and started her on IV antibiotics. She's sedated, but stable." He exhaled hard, almost a sob. "Thank God," Laura smiled faintly. "She's a fighter, but it'll be weeks before she can stand. Maybe months before she can be released into an enclosure." "I'll stay," he said instantly. "I'll help however I can." Laura raised a brow. "You know what that means, right? Cleaning enclosures, prepping meds, night shifts?" "I've done worse." She studied him and nodded. The weeks blurred. Elias stayed in a staff cabin, working alongside the team, cleaning stalls, prepping meals, checking charts. He visited Mira every morning, bringing her fresh blankets, reading out loud from old paperback novels, letting her sniff his clothes. She recovered slowly. Her eyes cleared. Her appetite returned. She even let one of the handlers scratch behind her ear. But she saved her gentlest reactions for Elias. One morning, she stood on 3 legs, limping to the edge of her enclosure to nuzzle his hand. Laura watched from a distance, shaking her head in amazement. 3 months later, the gates opened. Elias stood at the edge of the sanctuary's open wildlife preserve, watching as Mira stepped onto grass for the first time since she'd been rescued. Her leg was still stiff, her gait uneven, but she was free. She turned back once, looked at him, and blinked slowly, then lumbered toward the trees, vanishing into a golden sunset. Months passed. Mira became a permanent resident of the sanctuary, her condition too compromised for full wild release. But her enclosure spanned acres, filled with trees and rocks and a quiet pond where she liked to rest. Elias stayed on staff. Jasper ran alongside the golf carts. Darnell visited occasionally, always bringing jerky and strong opinions. But the real change came when the sanctuary installed a new plaque outside Mira's enclosure. "Mira, survivor of silence, rescued by compassion." People came from all over to hear her story, to learn how even the most brutal betrayal can be healed by a single act of kindness. And somewhere in the heart of the forest, the rope that once bound her had long since rotted, but the bond she'd forged, that would last forever.